Hi, welcome everyone. Good afternoon from Glasgow, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening in other parts of the world. And welcome to our live Q&A session. I'm Michael Lim. I'm the Deputy Program Convener of the MSc Creative Industries and Cultural Policy Program. And I have with me here a colleague, Nikki Kane, and we also have some current students with us, Melissa and Tianxing. I'll turn over to Nikki first to introduce a bit of herself.
Hello, I'm Nikki Kane, and like Michael said, I am one of the lecturers on the Creative Industries and Cultural Policy programme. So I teach across the programme, as well as sort of convening some specific option courses that you're able to take in the programme.
Thank you, Nikki. And we turn to Melissa and Tianxing. They are our current student representatives. Melissa?
Hi everyone, my name is Melissa. Like Mike said, I'm a current student in the program. I am Peruvian and Spanish, so I can talk about coming to study here from both parts of the world. And yes, I'm a class rep with Tianxin.
Thanks, Melissa. Tianxing?
Hi, everyone. My name is Tianxing Zhao from China, and now I'm current student in CICP. And yes, I will try my best to give some useful experience about as a Chinese student, maybe. Thank you.
Thanks, Tianxing. So, just to get the ball rolling, I'll give quite a very brief overview of the program. Basically, it's a one-year program. You'll start around mid-September with some of the core modules you will be having. So that is the core module one, that is a creative industries and cultural policy, which gives an overview of what creative industries are and the cultural policy elements. And then you will be taking research methods with me, and that is run across both semesters. So I will be seeing you throughout the whole year, unlike the other lecturers, you will meet probably just once in the semester, and then you'll meet them again during the dissertation. So that's kind of an overview. And then for the first semester, and then for the second semester, for the first semester, you also have other courses that you will be taking from the Adam Smith Business School. These include the project management and the managing innovation and creativity. And then we go to semester two, a continuation of the research methods module. And then you will be taking another core module, which is creative lives, which will be talking about the creative labor aspect, quality, diversity, and inclusion in the cultural and creative industries, and all those issues about becoming a creative kind of worker in that space. And after that, we go to summer. We'll have your dissertation, which Melissa and Tianxing will be going on soon in next month. So that's kind of the overview of the picture of the program. But also on semester two, you will have the chance to pick your optional modules, which include one of those. I am co-convening cultural cities and creative regions, and the other one is convened by Nikki, which is on cultural institutions. And you have some more other options that you can also choose from the other schools. So basically, that's the whole program that's run through across the whole year. And yeah, maybe Nikki, you'd like to kind of give a little bit of an overview of what you are kind of covering in cultural institutions.
Sure, yeah. So cultural institutions is a course that is one of the options that are available to you to choose for semester two. So that's a course that you would take alongside the core course, which is about creative lives. And in cultural institutions, we focus on institutions across kind of cultural and creative industries, mostly with a focus on more sort of stable institutions, so things like museums, libraries, performance companies, but also we look a little bit at sort of models or institutions that are a little more experimental, or things that sort of move in different parts of the world or have sort of different kind of more event-based approaches. So that includes things like festivals and biennials. So that sort of mix of things lets us think a little bit about different organizational structures, but really crucially, sort of about the way in which those sorts of institutions and those structures sort of interface between cultural practice, so the collections that we see or the performances that we see, and then the sort of policy contexts that those things sort of take place within. So this semester we have covered a whole host of really interesting institutions, and we've also had some really great guest speakers who have come to talk to us about their sort of experiences or their sort of specialist areas. So we had someone from Scottish Ballet, which is Scotland's national ballet company, to talk to us about, performance institutions. We had Drakisri Bazu, who is a former student actually of this programme, but is also a film producer who works across all sorts of places. She India and Europe. So she talked a lot about film institutions, film production, festivals, and how those things work together. We had someone from a local contemporary art gallery come and talk to us about a really fascinating programme they did with libraries. So that was a way of thinking about how libraries function in the sort of civic life of a city. And we also last week just took a field trip to a really, really interesting cultural institution, which is called Glasgow Women's Library. And it's a library and archive and museum. And we got to sort of have a tour and see behind the scenes. So in a lot of ways, it's quite typical, I think, of other courses in the programme where we have guest speakers, we cover quite a range of different areas of creative industries and cultural work. And yeah, we'll visit places, we'll bring in experts, and try to really sort of embed the kind of the critical academic work that we're doing along with real world out in their sort of experiences.
Thanks, Nikki, for that very detailed description. And yes, thank you for bringing that up. So actually, yeah, it's not only us, the staff from Glasgow, who you will be meeting and giving you the lectures. You will be learning not just from us, but also from industry experts. So as the program, we cover both the industry and the cultural policy elements. So we have policy practitioners. We bring them in to speak to you, to teach you, and to share the experiences. And we also have field trips, as Nikki mentioned. So again, depending obviously on the module that you are taking, for example, in the cultural cities and creative regions, we are actually going to have a field trip tomorrow. So again, depending on the module that you'll be taking, there will be some field trips involved as well. So it's a very holistic approach in terms of the program. It's not just, always in the classroom. You'll be learning a variety of things. Perhaps at this point, we can hear from some of our students about their experience. Maybe Melissa, you can begin about sharing, how it is basically as an international student from, from being from this part of the continent.
Yes, of course. Yeah, I definitely think that it is a very different experience to be a student coming from Europe than it is a student coming from farther away in the world. I know that maybe Tianxin can tell us about that later, but I think for me, one of the easiest things was probably the visa process. Even though now Europeans need a visa to come here, it was a pretty smooth process. It was all digital. It was given to me quite quickly. And fun fact, as Europeans don't have BRP, so we use our own country's IDs as BRPs. So the experience is a bit different because I know my other international friends have to sort of make sure they have it on them at all times and maybe renewing it when the time comes, stuff like that. So it's been pretty smooth in that sense. I think definitely being close to our home countries is another perk, perhaps, because it was easy for me to go back home for holidays, which is I know this was not the case for a lot of my friends and classmates because they're a bit further away. And yeah, that being the same time zone as well. I did not attend my undergrad in Europe. I attended it in Peru, which is my home country. But I do believe that the learning system is really different. Maybe I can talk a bit more about that later on, how it usually is for us Latin American students, our undergrad, because I've been talking about other Latin American students in the uni, and they all agree that it's really different. So I think that's one of the things that maybe I should have done before coming, so that I would not be as surprised as I was. Not in a bad way, I was just surprised. Which is to sort of research how the UK uni system works, how the semesters are divided. I really just came like with not a lot of previous knowledge, but hoping for the best. And I've had a great time so far. Like, nothing's been like wrong or bad. I just think that information is power, and the more you research beforehand, the more prepared you will be. So yeah, maybe Tianxin can tell us a bit more about how it is to be a student coming from China.
Thanks, Melissa, for that. Yeah, I think that's a very, very good point, and I think that's also why we are holding this kind of Q&A session, so that, to give you a bit more of information and trying to prepare you before coming in. Yeah, Kenshin, if you'd like to share some bit about your experience.
Yes, and mostly I find the most different things between the Chinese student, the university in China and here is like the culture diversity. Yes, maybe my undergraduate school is in Shanghai, and there is no like the like this kind of study environment. Like maybe when I come here, I can chatting with a lot of students from different countries, like from Peru, yes, and from Europe, yes, and maybe I can share a lot of my experience in China, and I can get more useful experience from the students from other countries. Yes, that's the most different. Yeah.
Thanks, Ching. Yeah, I think it's a very good point to emphasize that as well. We have a very international cohort. So having that kind of interaction with the international cohort is very, very excellent as well, because you get to share different types of experiences and you get to learn from that as well. I believe we have a question from one of the attendees. I was just wondering about whether this master's program was suitable for finding a job in publishing. Well, generally, because it's creative industry, it's very open. You can choose which industry you actually go to. You can also, for instance, some or most of the students that we have already have some industry experience that they bring when they actually take their masters, and pursuing that same path from where they come from. For instance, in the case of our alumna, who you have seen in the offer letter, which Nikki also mentioned. She is in the film industry, and she continued towards that same industry after finishing her master's. So it's actually up to you as well, whether you want to stay in the same industry if you have a previous industry experience, or if you want to take on a new industry path. That is also possible. So it's really up to you as a student what you make after out of your education here from after you take the program. So it's pretty flexible in that sense, because we kind of cover the variety or the broad creative industry spectrum. So in terms of just finding a job afterwards, and in relation to any particular industry, it's pretty open basically. So to answer your question, generally yes, you might be able to do that.
And is it maybe worth saying as well that sort of, I think, as Micah said, one of the things that we do is, we look at all sorts of creative industries. And so a lot of people will have a particular area that they're interested in, but also really sort of benefit from seeing how that industry they maybe know a little bit about or have experience with, how that relates to other parts of the creative industries. Or the sort of the things that are really particularly special about the area that you're interested in. But it's also maybe a useful way of thinking, or getting us to sort of think a little bit about the dissertation. So that's also the point in the programme where, if you're really interested in something like publishing or any other part of the creative industries that you really want to focus in on, that's sort of your opportunity to really develop your own project. And that's also the point where, I mean, I guess throughout all of the assignments and so on, you're able to bring in the things that you're interested in. But especially in the dissertation, that's your sort of project, that's your sort of research area. So if there's something really specific about the publishing industry that's sort of your opportunity to focus in, and that can also help sort of steer you towards the kind of the career prospects that you're interested in.
That's right. Thanks, Nikki. Yeah, so the dissertation is quite very, very important. And once you take on my module research methods in semester one, I will already remind you that, start thinking about what you want to take on for your dissertation, because early planning will obviously be very, very helpful. Again, at that point, maybe once you get program, you still don't have any clear idea, but we will always encourage you and remind you to think about it as early as possible, because again, planning will always lead to more and better success, generally speaking. So having that kind of mindset from the get-go, preparing and starting to think about your possible dissertation topic will be very, very advantageous. So yeah. How about, for example, earlier you already mentioned, Melissa and Chenxing, about the different educational system. How about moving to Glasgow? How was that kind of the experience?
Before answering your question, Mike, I just want to double down on what you said, that it's really important to come with a dissertation topic already thought out, because you might think that you'll have a lot of time to think about it, but that's not really true, because time flies here. Like the semesters are really like packed and they go by really fast. And I think probably the reason why I've approached the research methods course with such ease is because I already knew what I wanted to talk about, because I'm bringing it from my undergrad time. So yeah, just to double down on that, even if you're not completely sure and you want to make sure that's the topic you like once you're here, I think everybody has an interest or an inkling of what they might want to do. And the more you have that ready and the more you read about that beforehand, the easier it will be. So to answer your question, Mike, about moving to Glasgow, Glasgow's cold. It's really cold. But I think that's not really a surprise. Everybody knows that the Scottish weather might be a bit gloomy, might be a bit sad at times. It's not California, it's not like sunshine the whole year. But to me, I think the main difference was going from really living in really big cities to living in a smaller size city like Glasgow, which, despite being, Scotland's most populated city, it still feels small to me, coming from a really, really big city. So that has its perks and also maybe not that, like, not so good aspects. I think it's a very walkable city. I like that. I sometimes walk from my accommodation to uni, which is literally across the city. It takes an hour to cross the city, but I think that's fine for a city, like this size. Just an hour walking. Everything's close by because of that, unless you want to like explore things outside of the city center, which I would also recommend, because I started doing that recently that I have a bit more time. And it's really interesting the things you can find. Glasgow's a very multicultural city as well. So you can maybe find specific types of food or experiences that come from other cultures, other countries, and they're here for you to experience. So I would definitely advise people to get a trusted buddy and explore outside. The subway loop. That's another thing. Me coming from I'm sure Tianjin as well, coming from China, where everything's really, really advanced. I'm coming from Madrid, where our metro system has 12 lines and the bus is running 24 hours a day. That's quite different in Glasgow. The transportation system is different. It's a lot simpler. But maybe that's why I like walking so much. Before coming here, I thought I would get a bike because I'm an urban biker. And that was my plan, to literally come here and buy a bike. But I didn't know Glasgow was this hilly. So, fun fact, if you plan to ride a bike, think about that. Because it's really hilly. It's not as easy as you might think. I thought, okay, Glasgow's next to the sea, must be flat. But it's not. It's incredibly hilly. Even the uni is incredibly hilly. So keep that in mind if you had the idea of riding a bike here, like I did. you might want to give up on that idea.
Thanks, Melissa. But also, in terms of the bike, we have a lot of bike facilities anyway. So technically, as well, you don't necessarily need to buy a bike, but of course, you are free to do so. But anyway, let's hear from Tianxing's experience, your move to Glasgow.
Oh, yes. For me, the most impressive things is the pace of life in Glasgow is really slow. Yes, especially it's different from China. Yes, in China you can see everyone are like running for the work. Yes, but here is when I after class when I walk through the like when I walk through the park, you can see a lot of people enjoy their afternoon time. Yes, and I need to check, is that really a working day or the weekend? Yes, and another thing is there are many opportunities to get some culture information. Like I have been the Kevin Group Museum and galleries for many times. Yes, and that was most impressive things for me. Thank you.
I think
Thanks.
Can
another.
I?
I'm not. Sorry, guys. Just to add on what Tianxin was saying, a fun fact is that um, Glasgow has a really decently like medium sized uh, concert venue, which is the Oval Hydro, which Edinburgh doesn't have because Edinburgh has like a larger stadium. So Glasgow gets a lot of the more like medium sized artists and concerts. So there's always concerts going on here. And if somebody comes to Scotland, chances are they're coming to Glasgow. So that's really good.
Yeah, I wanted to just sort of add in, I guess, sort of follow on from what you both said, that there's something I think about the scale of the city and the cultural life in the city. So, as Tenching said, there are museums really close. So the university has its own museum and art gallery. There's also the one that you mentioned, Kelvin Grove, which is super close to the university. And then there are museums in other parts of the city. Museums here are all free to access, apart from any sort of special exhibitions that you might want to go to. But there are also, yeah, as Melissa said, big concert venues, very small concert venues. Glasgow is a sort of music city, so there are music festivals for sort of different specialisms, whether it's jazz or folk music or huge big pop bands. But there are also, loads of theatres. There's a film festival. There's so much sort of cultural activity that you can participate in. And I think for a programme like ours, that's sort of key. So you get to be thinking about cultural production and policy and the industries and the way that those things are sort of shaped, but you also get to be out and sort of experiencing culture as it happens. And I think because the scale of the city is very walkable, and there's also, exactly as Tanshing said, there's a sort of, I guess, a sort of slowness, a sort of friendliness. It's actually really quite easy when you find some time in your very busy study schedule, but you can meet artists really easily. You can bump into musicians. You can really be sort of part of the cultural life of the city. It's not something that's really separate. And for a program like this, you can have these really interesting conversations and meet really interesting people.
Thanks,
I have
Nikki.
a
Yeah.
question for Nikki. Sorry, Mike,
Yes.
because I don't think I've ever asked you this, Nikki. What is your favorite cultural venue in the city?
That is really difficult. I would say it sort of varies time to time. I would say venue-wise, I like places like Tramway, which is on the south side of the city, or the CCA, which is not that far from the university, because they tend to be sort of multi-art form. So they always have really interesting new exhibition programs, but there's quite often dance, performance, film, that kind of thing happening as well. But I also really like when it's sort of any of the festival seasons. So the International Festival of Visual Art will be in a few months. We just had the film festival. Yeah, there's sort of always something.
Thanks, Nikki. Yeah, I was also going to say that, you won't run out of events, especially, we really encourage you to go out attend those events, especially for a program like us, creative industries and cultural policy. By going out, you also learn, and you can, get more insights from that by attending those events. And as Nikki also mentioned, Glasgow is the UNESCO Creative City of Music, and just like 2 weeks ago, we had a guest lecture from Glasgow talking about that process, about becoming a UNESCO Creative City of Music, the cultural strategy that Glasgow has, how the process is. So everything is very, very informative in that sense. You really get immersed into the real world context. It's not just studying about the theories, but we get industry experts and practitioners to share their experiences and go through the process with you. It's like an insider's look into how things work, basically. So yeah, um, maybe some more questions for Melissa and Tianxing. How about, for example, in terms of support? Because you mentioned obviously about the different types of educational system, moving here and there, and it's very much new. How in terms of support, what kind of support did you actually kind of receive from Glasgow, if you actually made use of some of these services? But if not, I can always give some bits of information about that. But again, case to case basis, some students might need some kind of service or assistance in terms of that, academically. So yeah, Melissa and Tianxing.
I think being international students, we are required to complete a course in academic writing before, like after a few weeks of the first term have started. Like that's the deadline, which sort of gives you an overview of how academic writing works in the UK, which is definitely useful because we have academic experience, but in different settings and different languages. And I know there are also, I think this is one of international students' main concerns, like how to properly express themselves. And exactly, I was gonna talk about that. There's a series of lectures going around now as well, I think, that you can sign up to. You can sign up for taking part in these classes, and it's academic writing for dissertation and some specific tools like that, which I think are definitely, that will definitely come in handy if you are not completely confident in your abilities, or you want to find the best way to translate what you already know, because that's another thing. After coming here, there are some rules that I know and used to follow when I was writing academically in Spanish that are different here. Doesn't make them like right or wrong, they're just different. Some things are allowed that maybe in Spanish are not. So it's good to know that and to sort of incorporate that into your writing.
Thanks, Melissa. How about Tianxing?
Yes, I think it's enough to set about the academic writing. But yesterday I find some interesting things about the student support. Like when I check my Moodle, and I found there is a sector about the students' mental health. Yes, there is lecture called like to teach students how to schedule their time or make the timetable, make the project, like the project management. Yes, I think that is really special student support. Yes.
Thanks, Tianxing. Yeah, so there are a variety of support that the university provides. So one of those, the link has already been popped out. It's on student learning development. So that's the office that you can access, basically. And they provide a whole range of support in terms of academic writing, dissertation, narrowing down topics, many types, even for quantitative approaches, for example. So we have a specialist for that. You can just request a meeting if there's a group of you, 4, 5, or 6 of you wanting to learn about a specific type of quantitative approach. For instance, you can write to that academic support in charge, and you can just basically set up, or he or she will set up that kind of session with you. So there's a range of available support. And yes, it's very good, Tianxing, that you mentioned about the mental health. There is again another range of support in terms of that. So we have the mental health well-being support. So that is very, very important, because obviously different people, different experiences. For others it's easier to adjust, others it's not as easy, it can be very challenging, and the university has set up those kind of support systems to assist you. um yeah, I think anything else, are the, for example, maybe how about some challenges that you have experienced in your stay during this, as you quite described it a bit, quite fast paced program, Melissa or Tenshing?
Yes, that's what I meant when I said it was good for people to sort of understand how the UK school system works. Because, well, first of all, this is my first time studying in the Northern Hemisphere, which has a different school calendar. And our semesters in the Southern Hemisphere are just two, divided, it goes from March to June and then from September to December. So it sort of goes with the like calendar year. You just divide it into it, and that's it. But I believe semesters here are like 3, 4-ish, right? And I I take part in the a cappella society, and all of my fellow a cappella members are from undergrad courses, and their schedules are quite different than mine. So they do have maybe exams week, and after we finish like this sort of semester, they're going to start up classes again. So it's not the same for everyone. It's different. For us, we sort of have very, I wouldn't say crammed, but like a very intense 10-week first semester, 10-week second semester. And then we are free to work on our dissertation. So I originally thought that we would have less time for our dissertation, but it's good to know that the time frame is actually a bit more relaxed, and we have probably from the whole of April, if you want to start working on it, from April till July, right? Am I right? Because it's August where you have to turn it in, so you should potentially have it ready by July. But I think those 4 full months are good enough for you to prepare a good dissertation and to focus on that without having to worry about attending other classes or preparing other assignments. So I think in the end it makes sense, even if at first it's like, oh, this is like a different way of organizing the semester. It ends up making a lot of sense for what we're doing. And it was, I wouldn't say challenging, but it was definitely different. So you have to sort of get ready to make the most of those 10 weeks. And I'm a volunteer at Unibuddy, so I talk with some prospective students sometimes, and one of them was asking me if I think it's enough to sort of get all that we need from the courses, and I told her that I do believe it is if you do the work, because it's not enough just going to class or going to class sometimes. No, you have to go to all of your classes and make the most of the things that are given to you, the academic resources, to read all of your readings, to prepare for your classes. If you do that, you will be like making the most of the courses, because the course is not just the time where you're going to class. You also have a lot of readings to prepare beforehand. There's group work that we could do in the seminars to further intensify our learning. So yeah, I think that would be my advice, that it is good. It is a good time frame, but a lot of the responsibility of truly making the most of it is on you, how you approach your studies.
Thanks, Melissa. That's a very, very good point. Yeah. I think it's very important to note that in terms of the different type of educational system, because this is a postgraduate taught program, but even if it's a postgraduate taught program, because it's a master's program, obviously there will be a lot of share of work being done by the students. And we mentioned that, we usually always mention that in the program, that there are student-led activities, independent self-study. You need to do your share as well. So it's not enough. Melissa's very correct on that. It's not enough to just attend the lecture, the seminar. If you just do that, it's not going to be very complete, because you need to do your share as well. You need to explore. That's why attending activities, cultural events are also helpful because they are practical things that you can bring in when you actually write your essays, your academic essays. So thanks for that, Melissa. Tianxing?
Oh, well, yes. For me, the biggest challenge is the academic writing. Yes. That is really the requirements and the structure of assignment is quite different, especially in China and here. And maybe there is also the challenge about the language. Yes, for me, and maybe for especially for Chinese student, there is lack of confidence to answer the questions or talking in the class for us. But but I'll try my best to work on it now. Like you can you can try to be a class representative, or you can try your best to talk about the questions in the seminar class. Yes.
Thank you,
Can
Tianxing.
I
Yeah.
pick up a couple
Yes,
of things?
Nikki.
Yeah, I just think both of you said some really interesting things that I think are worth sort of emphasizing. So you both sort of emphasized the point in participating, and I think that that can be a bit of a shift for anyone when you move to another sort of environment, or just that sort of step into master's level study. There's, it's a big jump. You're doing a master's, so participating, doing all of the reading, but yeah, participating in class, and sometimes there is a sort of confidence thing that happens, but that's something that I think sort of happens gradually as you just become familiar and you become more comfortable with the material, because of course you're here to work, you're reading a lot of stuff, you're learning a lot of information from lectures and so on. But that sort of participating, I think, really makes the difference. So when you come to the program, the more you can ask questions, do extra reading, visit things in the city. But also, I think what you were sort of both pointing to as well, being a student rep or joining societies or being a volunteer, all of these things sort of help with that kind of confidence, but also the wider skill set that you learn. You obviously get a lot of knowledge in the program, but you also develop a lot of sort of broader skills that are kind of a bit more transferable. So it's that sort of broad kind of participation, I think, that's really important for the program.
Thanks, Nikki. So I think that's about it. We don't have any more questions, but with that, thank you so much for attending this session, and we are very much looking forward to welcoming you and joining you in our program. With that, have a very good afternoon, and thank you.
Thank you. Good luck.